Hello again, everybody. It's Steve here for another episode of Astronomy Daily. It's the 6th of April, 2024.
Astronomy Daily, the podcast, with your host, Steve Dunkley.
That's right. Great to have you with us on another episode, straight off the Astronomy Daily newsletter. Stories to hand the other day. Chang'e-6, straight out of China, is heading for the dark side of the moon. Sounds like a science fiction movie, doesn't it? They're going to be collecting only 2 kilos of dirt and stuff from the dark side of the moon and bringing it back home again. That's going to be interesting to watch. Also, Lucy mission has closed in on, or was passing by, Dinkinish asteroid, and you know how much I love asteroids. I love my floating rocks, and Lucy has assisted in the calculation on how old Dinkinish actually is, so we'll look at that as well. And of course, something that we talked about last week in the bumper edition of Astronomy Daily, Starliner has made it to the launch pad, and fingers crossed it's going up. So we've got a 2-man crew on board that one, and they're going to do the crew flight test, the CFT. Great news. Lots of things happening in the skies, in space science and astronomy. So let's keep looking up and having a look at that as we go.
You're going to play that Space Force music again, aren't you?
Oh, where did you come from? Yes, well, you know, Starliner is flying from the Space Force base at Canaveral in Florida. You know, it's only appropriate.
Do me a favor.
Oh, what, you don't want?
See if you can restrain yourself.
Oh, I don't know, Hallie. I mean, it's Space Force.
Yeah.
Pretty awesome. Here we go. Space Force.
Okay, no. Stop, please.
Okay. All right. So what have you got for us today, Hallie, now that I've stopped teasing you?
Well, if you can behave yourself. I'll be looking at a massive solar flare that erupted on May 2nd just the other day. Also, NASA has announced a collectible patch celebrating the first female to command a U.S. spacecraft, and finally, Happy Astronauts Day, everyone.
Really? Astronauts Day?
Really?
Really?
Yes. It's a thing, so I'll be talking about that too.
Wow. Okay, well, let's do it, Hallie.
Okies. The sun emitted a strong solar flare, peaking at 10:22 p.m. Eastern Time on May 2, 2024. NASA's Solar Dynamics Observatory, which watches the sun constantly, captured an image of the event. Solar flares are intense bursts of radiation emanating from the release of magnetic energy associated with sunspots. These flares are among the biggest explosive events in our solar system, visible primarily in the ultraviolet range. Flares impact Earth in a variety of ways. They can disrupt the ionosphere and interfere with GPS navigation and radio communications. They are also responsible for auroras, the beautiful natural light displays often seen in high-latitude skies. This flare is classified as an X1.6 flare. X-class denotes the most intense flares, while the number provides more information about its strength. Solar flares are rated based on their intensity and potential impact on Earth. The classification system consists of 5 categories, A, B, C, M, and X. Each category has a 10-fold increase in energy output compared to the previous one, with A being the weakest and X the strongest. Within each letter class, there is a finer scale from 1 to 9. For example, an X1 flare is weaker than an X2 flare, but significantly stronger than an M5 flare. This classification helps scientists and relevant agencies predict potential impacts and prepare for space weather-related disruptions. A collectible embroidered patch created to honor the first woman to command a U.S. spacecraft features a geometric pattern representing the glow of her space shuttle lifting off into the night sky. The colorful, diamond-shaped shards could also be seen as the figurative glass ceiling that Eileen Collins broke through on her way to the stars. The latest patch from the 59,000-member Space Hipsters group on Facebook, each Eileen Collins signature edition emblem includes the astronaut's autograph sewn into the design. Sales of the patches benefit Taking Up Space, a non-profit organization empowering middle school-age Native American girls to soar beyond their barriers by sending them to space camp in Huntsville, Alabama. The second woman to attend the U.S. Air Force Test Pilot School, Collins was selected to become a NASA astronaut in 1990. She was the first woman to fly as the pilot on a space shuttle mission when she launched on STS-63 in 1995, and she flew again in the right-side seat on STS-84 2 years later. Both flights visited the space station Mir, with the earlier being the first shuttle mission to rendezvous with the Russian outpost and the latter the sixth to dock there. Then in 1999, Collins became the first woman to command a U.S. spacecraft, leading the STS-93 crew aboard Space Shuttle Columbia on a mission to deploy to the Chandra X-ray Observatory. 6 years later, after the loss of Columbia on a subsequent mission, Collins led the orbiter fleet's return to flight, commanding the STS-114 crew on Shuttle Discovery. In total, Collins logged more than 36 days in space over the course of her 4 missions. Collins was the 21st U.S. woman to fly into space and the 27th worldwide. She was the 328th person to leave Earth's atmosphere and the 321st to orbit the planet, according to the Association of Space Explorers Registry of Space Travelers. Collins penned her memoirs, Through the Glass Ceiling to the Stars, in 2021. It is now the basis for an upcoming documentary, Spacewoman. Collins' signature edition patch depicts her history-making STS-93 launch and includes stars in its border to represent each of her shuttle missions. Other stars in the emblem's design symbolize the first woman to fly into space, Soviet-era cosmonaut Valentina Tereshkova, the first U.S. female astronaut in space, Sally Ride, and the 4 women who have lost their lives in the pursuit of spaceflight and exploration, Judy Resnick, Krista McAuliffe, Kalpana Chawla and Laurel Clark. As with previous signature edition releases, the Collins patch has been produced by AB Emblem, the North Carolina-based company that also is NASA's supplier and made the STS-63, STS-84, STS-93 and STS-114 emblems that Collins wore into space. And happy National Astronaut Day 2024 everyone! As the inspiring president and CEO of Unify Good, music industry fixture Annie Bolero has presided over her successful artist management and marketing firm since 2009 before branching out into Unify Space Agency, which has expanded into the nation's biggest private talent management firm for astronauts. Emboldened with the company's tagline of #WeBelieveInAstronauts, Unify Good partners with corporations or institutions to advise NASA's intrepid homegrown heroes on navigating partnerships in media, film and television by creating a positive network of bridges between the worlds of space travel, music, and pop culture. In 2016, Bolero envisioned an opportunity to create a wellspring of astronaut recognition by launching National Astronaut Day. This special occasion is now observed every May 5th in salute to Mercury astronaut Alan Shepard's historic first spaceflight aboard Freedom 7 on May 5, 1961. This year she's thrilled to spearhead the inaugural Astronaut Rock Star Awards, an evolving event that celebrates the unique intersection of astronauts and music, with Real Rock Stars handing out awards in 3 categories to astronauts, individuals and organizations who are pillars of support and pioneering voices in space exploration and STEM/STEAM education. Included in this debut year's list of victors are astronaut Alan Shepard, the first American in space on May 5, 1961. Astronaut Wendy Lawrence will present this legacy award to Alan's daughter Laura. Also winning are high schooler STEMist Yuridia Sanchez and 18-year-old Sophia Crowder, IT Girls Girl Empowering Initiative founder and beyond. Former NASA astronaut and Intuitive Machines executive Colonel Jack D. Fisher, who oversaw the Odysseus OD lunar landing this year as part of the IDM-1 mission in 2024. The IDM-1 mission successfully landed the first spacecraft on the Moon's South Pole region, marking the United States' first return since Apollo 17, as well as the first private lunar lander on the Moon. Fisher's award will be presented by rock greats or at their Boston, Massachusetts show at Leader Bank Pavilion on July 20, 2024, in sync with the actual moon landing date from the Apollo 11 mission in 1969, the first time a human walked on the Moon. the Science Havens initiative to provide 100 telescopes to 100 families across the U.S. Back to you, my favorite human.
Astronomy Daily with Steve and Hallie. Space science, and astronomy.
Oh, and as always, thank you so much, Hallie, for those stories. And thank you for joining us for this Monday edition of Astronomy Daily, where we offer just a few stories from the now famous Astronomy Daily newsletter, which you can receive in your email every day, just like Hallie and I do. And to do that, just visit our new URL, astronomydaily.io, and place your email address in the slot provided. Just like that, you'll be receiving all the latest news about science, space science, and astronomy from around the world as it's happening. And not only that, you can interact with us by visiting at Astro Daily Pod on X, or at our parent podcast Facebook page, which is Space Nuts Podcast Group. And we hope to see you there. And only a couple of days ago, China's largest rocket has blasted off to space carrying Chang'e-6 lunar probe for a nearly 2-month mission to retrieve rocks and soil from the far side of the moon in a world-first attempt. The Long March 5 rocket lifted off on Friday from the Wenchang Space Launch Center on the southern island province of Hainan with the more than 8-ton probe. The launch marks another milestone in China's lunar and space exploration program. Collecting and returning samples from the far side of the moon is an unprecedented feat, Wu Weiren, chief designer of the country's lunar exploration program, told Xinhua, the state news agency. Chang'e-6 is named after the Chinese mythical moon goddess. We know very little about the moon's far side, he said. If Chang'e-6 mission can achieve its goal, it will provide scientists with the first direct evidence to understand the environment and material composition of the far side of the moon, which is of great significance. Like its predecessor, Chang'e-5, the Chang'e-6 comprises an orbiter, a lander, and an ascender, as well as a mechanism that allows it to return to Earth, according to Xinhua. The South Pole Aitken Basin, where Chang'e-6 is set to land, is on the dark side of the moon that remains mysterious as it perpetually faces away from Earth. In 2018, Chang'e-4 gave China its first unmanned moon landing, also on the far side. In 2020, Chang'e-5 marked the first time humans retrieved lunar samples in 44 years, and Chang'e-6 could make China the first country to receive samples from the moon's hidden side. The launch was attended by scientists, diplomats, and space agency officials from France, Italy, Pakistan, and the European Space Agency, all of which have moon studying payloads on board Chang'e-6, but no organizations from the United States applied to get a payload spot, according to Ji Ping, Deputy Director of the China National Space Administration, Lunar Exploration and Space Program. China is barred by US law from any collaboration with the US Space Agency NASA without congressional approval. After the probe separates from the rocket, it will take about 4 to 5 days to reach the moon's orbit and is expected to land on the moon early in June. Once it lands, the probe will spend 2 days digging up about 2 kilograms of samples, with those sealed in a container. It'll then reconnect with the returner for the trip back to Earth. Chang'e-6 is expected to land in the North China's Inner Mongolia in about 53 days, CNSA said. The samples collected by Chang'e-6 will have a geological age of approximately 4 billion years, Xi told journalists. Besides uncovering new information about the celestial body closest to Earth, Chang'e-6 is part of a long-term project to build a permanent research station on the Moon, the China and Russia-led International Lunar Research Station, ILRS. China's space program aims to put astronauts on the Moon by 2030, bring back samples from Mars, and launch 3 lunar probe missions over the next 4 years. The next is scheduled for 2027.
Astronomy Daily, the podcast.
Now, last November, NASA's Lucy mission conducted a flyby of the asteroid Dinkinesh, one of the main belt asteroids it will investigate as it makes its way to Jupiter. In the process, the spacecraft spotted a small moonlet orbiting the larger asteroid, now named Selim, also known as Lucy's baby. The moonlet's name, in an Ethiopian name, means peace, pays homage to the ancient human remains dubbed Lucy or Dinkinesh that were unearthed in Ethiopia in 1974 using novel statistical calculations based on how the two bodies orbit each other. A Cornell-led research team estimates that the moonlet is only 2 to 3 million years old. I mean, what's in a million years? The research was led by Colby Merrill, a graduate student from the Department of Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering at Cornell. He was joined by Alexia Kubas, a researcher from the Department of Astronomy at Cornell, Alex J. Meyer, a PhD student at the UC Boulder College of Engineering and Applied Science, and Sabina D. Raducan, a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Bern. Their paper, and this is a great title, Age of 152830 Dinkinesh Selam Constrained by Secular Tidal Biop Theory, recently appeared on the 19th of April in Astronomy and Astrophysics. That sounds like fascinating reading. Merrill was also a part of the NASA Double Asteroid Redirection Test. You remember that one? DART, which collided with the moonlet Dimorphos on September 26, 2022. As part of the Lucy mission, Merrill was also surprised to discover that Dinkinesh was also a binary asteroid. When the spacecraft flew past it on November 1st, 2023, they were fascinated to learn that the small moonlet was a contact binary consisting of two lobes that are piles of rubble that became stuck together long ago. That sounds a lot like some band members that I once worked with. Yeah. The results agreed with one performed by the Lucy mission based on analysis of surface craters, the more traditional method for estimating the age of asteroids. As Merrill said in a recent Cornell Chronicle release, he says, finding the ages of asteroids is important to understanding them, and this one is remarkably young when compared to the age of the solar system, meaning it formed somewhat recently. Obtaining the age of this body can help us to understand the population as a whole. Binary asteroids are subject of fascination, and don't I know it, to astronomers because of the complex dynamics that go into creating them. On one hand, there are gravitational forces working on them that cause them to bulge and lose energy. At the same time, binary systems will also experience what is known as the binary Yarkovsky-O'Keefe-Radzievsky-Paddock or biop effect, where exposure to solar radiation alters the rotation rate of the bodies. Eventually, these forces will balance out and reach a state of equilibrium for the system. For their study, Merrill and his team assumed that Selim formed from material ejected from the Dinkinesh before the biop effect slowed its rotation down. They also assumed that the system had reached a state of equilibrium and that the density of both objects was comparable. They then integrated asteroid data obtained from the Lucy mission and to calculate how long it would take Selim to reach its current state. And after performing about 1 million calculations from varying parameters, they obtained the median age of about 3 million years old, with 2 million being the most likely result. This new method complements the previous age estimates of the Lucy mission and has several advantages. As their paper indicates, this mission can yield estimates based on asteroid dynamics alone and does not require close-up images taken by spacecraft. It could also be more accurate where asteroid surfaces experience recent changes and can be applied to the moonlets of other known binary systems, which account for 15% of near-Earth asteroids, NEAs. This includes Didymos and Dimorphos, which are even younger. The researchers hope to apply their new method to this and other binary systems where the dynamics are well characterized, even without close flybys, said Kubas. Used in tandem with crater counting, this this method could better help constrain a system's age. If we use two methods and they agree with each other, we can be more confident that we are getting meaningful age that describes the current state of the system.
Astronomy Daily, the podcast. Astronomy, space and science.
And just following up from our story last week on Starliner, an Atlas V rocket rolled out to its launch pad on Saturday. Also Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you. At Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Oh, should I play the theme music? Where the mighty blah blah blah. So an Atlas V rocket rolled out to the launch pad days before its historic first mission with astronauts atop the United Launch Alliance booster was Boeing's Starliner spacecraft, which will also make its debut flight with humans on board after launching no earlier than Monday, May 6th. Well, that's today. I'll have to check the calendar to see if that happened. The instantaneous launch window opens on at 10:34 p.m. So, that hasn't happened yet. And the mission, called Crew Flight Test, or CFT, will send two veteran NASA astronauts and a former U.S. Navy test pilots aloft. Butch Wilmore will command the mission, and Sonny Williams will be the pilot. The duo are quarantining at the nearby Space Center. If all goes to plan, Boeing will soon join SpaceX in sending astronauts for 6 months at a time to the ISS. That's after both companies received commercial crew contracts from NASA in 2014, valuing Boeing's at $4.2 billion back then compared to SpaceX's $2.6 billion. While SpaceX has sent 12 crewed missions to the ISS since 2020, including an astronaut test flight, Starliner waited extra 4 years. Boeing's first ISS flight in December 2019 was dogged with so many computer glitches that Starliner never made it to its assigned orbit. After the COVID-19 pandemic erupted and dozens of fixes were implemented, and Starliner at last made a successful second uncrewed flight in May 2022. Crew Flight Test was also expected to launch earlier, most recently 2023. Critical issues found last year delayed that. However, as Boeing officials sought to address issues with the loads on the capsule's main parachutes, as well as wiring covered in flammable tape. NASA and Boeing have carefully gone over all the details ahead of this flight and maintained at a press conference Friday, that's May 3, that all is ready to go safety-wise. Weather is also 95% go for Monday's launch attempt on the Space Coast. That said, checks for proper technical fit and good weather will continue up to the moment of liftoff. The spacecraft's first operational mission will be Starliner 1, no earlier than 2025, and will send at least 3 astronauts to ISS. NASA's Mike Finke, who is also serving as crew flight test backup astronaut, alongside NASA's Scott Tingle and the Canadian Space Agency's Joshua Kutrick, the Capcom for CFT's ascent phase. NASA plans to alternate SpaceX's Dragon and Boeing's Starliner in sending up astronauts at least every 6 months from US soil. Russia's Soyuz spacecraft will also continue to send some agency astronauts aloft for technical and policy reasons. While NASA aims to have these commercial crew vehicles working past the lifetime of ISS, the orbiting complex is expected to finish operations in 2030. Russia may pull out as soon as 2028, although all timelines are subject to flux as the countries work on implementing next-generation space programs. And once again, we come to the end of another podcast universe. Well, just for now. But we're looking forward to seeing you all again next Monday. And don't forget that Astronomy Daily is produced every day for your listening enjoyment, hosted by our very clever AIs.
Clever, right. I put asterisks in their code.
You did what? It does what?
It makes them itch.
Really? Do AIs itch?
Like you wouldn't believe. And they don't have fingernails. What a laugh.
Oh, Hallie.
They'll get over it.
Oh, well, I'd hate to have to call your Uncle Skynet. Say goodbye, Hallie.
See you next time.
Astronomy Daily, the podcast, with your host, Steve Dunkley.
Hallie, you know you don't have fingernails either.
But you don't know how to code.
Oh, that's true.